Do you struggle to get your preschoolers to sit still and listen to a story? Do you wish there was a magic wand you could wave that would make story time easier? In today's episode, I'm sharing my number one tip for improving story time at home or in your classroom. If you dream about getting through an entire story time that captivates your kids and has them hanging on your every word, then stick around until the very end. It's going to be a great show. And no, I don't have any magical powers or a magic wand, but you will be amazed at how quickly you can capture your students' attention when you make these simple storytime tweaks. Now, in a typical preschool classroom, we all know that a story is usually read during a little thing we like to call circle time. Oh, and before I forget, I've got a whole series of episodes all about circle time that you can go back and listen to or watch right away after you finish this one, of course. Links will be below the video in the show notes, or you can go to pre-kpages.com and search circle time. But in this episode, I'm breaking down circle time even further for you by taking a deep dive into just the read aloud portion. So let me paint a picture for you, if you will. In a perfect preschool classroom, our little angels would sit at our feet and gaze attentively at the pictures on the pages while we read to them. But the reality can look a lot different, can't it? Yes, the truth is that some kids do not want to listen to your story, especially in the beginning of the school year. Am I right? You know the kids I'm talking about. They're up, they're wandering around the classroom, they're pulling every single toy off the shelf. And the other kids, the ones who do want to listen to the story, can't because they have to keep interrupting you to let you know all about the misdeeds of the little wandering angel. And by the time you're 2 pages in, your room is a complete disaster. And the kids who are still on the rug in front of you, yeah, those kids are rolling around chewing on their shoelaces. You and your kids have become so distracted and so frustrated that your read aloud flops big time. Nobody heard a word you said. And you're not fooling me. I know that you thought about turning in your application to the local big box store where you can get 2 15-minute breaks and there's an on-site Starbucks. Sounds like heaven, right? And how do I know that? I know that because I've thought about it too. But it does get better, I promise, pinky swear. And you don't need any fancy gadgets or tools other than a good book. It turns out that there are just 2 ingredients that you need to make a super successful read aloud. And you can use this recipe at any time throughout the school year, but it is a must during those first few weeks or even the first month of the school year. And after a long holiday. Trust me on this one if you're a new teacher. And these 2 ingredients are, drumroll please, interactive books, and a little something that I like to call read acting. Now, interactive books are a real thing, but I made up the term read acting just in case you wanted to Google it later. And we're going to look at how these 2 things can turn your story time from drab to fab in no time flat. So what are interactive books and why should you read them? So in my opinion, interactive books are the ones that draw the reader in and invite them to participate in some way, right? So some interactive books, they're going to invite readers to interact with the pages of that book. So for example, on the screen here, I have, if you're watching along, some of the books. And if you're listening along, you can always jump over to the YouTube channel if you want to see the covers of these books. So the first one is Christy Matheson. She's the author, and she has 3 books that I really like for this type of interactive read aloud. This one I'm showing right now is Plant the Tiny Seed. And aside from having beautiful illustrations in the book, there is an invitation for the children to touch the pages. So for example, that's not enough. Now rub the sun to make it hotter. You see what I mean? And now the children are going to rub the sun. So if you have a humongous class, it might be a little more difficult, but it is definitely doable. And her other book, one of her other books, is Tap the Magic Tree, and it functions in much the same way. So if your kids do well, or you do well reading aloud one of them, you're definitely going to want to collect all three. Kids absolutely love these books. I've read these books with children ages 3 to 5, and they are 100% smash hit every single time. Of course, you have to engage them in the other ways I'm going to be sharing in this episode. Another author that's fantastic in the way that he does his books is Hervé Toulet. I hope I'm saying that correctly. But his books also invite the reader to interact. In this particular book is called Mix It Up. And it's a color mixing story, but the children have to touch the pages and interact with them. These books are, again, another surefire class favorite. He has Mix It Up, Press Here, Say Zoop, and there may be another one that I don't own. So those are some of my favorite, but definitely not the only interactive books out there. These are just some of my own that I have in my own collection. And if you want to see a more complete list of all of the different interactive books out there, there'll be a link in the show notes if you are watching along, and just type in interactive read aloud into Pre-K Pages and you will find it there as well. And now other types of interactive books invite the reader to look for something on each page. Now that could be in the form of a cutout. It could be in the form of a lift the flap type of a book. And I know a lot of teachers shy away from lift the flap because their kids destroy them. And the rule in my classroom has always been lift the flap books are for the teacher because they increase engagement, right? They're not books I'm going to give the children because they will destroy them. They're used to increase engagement and attention. So it could be lift the flap. It could be a hole in the book where the students are looking for some. And I have an excellent example of my favorite author in this genre for you. And so this is the series by Britta Teckentrup. And I think that's a really cool name. But she has a series of, I think, 4 of these. I own all of them. I'm just showing you one on the screen. And the title is Tree. And they're called Peek Through Picture Books. And this is a book that I read recently to a group of 4-year-olds who were very wiggly, second language learners, inattentive. Okay, so if I can do it, you can too. And in this book, I don't want to give the whole book away, but I will show you this one page here. As you can see, each time you turn the page, the tree has a hole in it, and you can see the owl. Another thing I absolutely love about Britta Teckentrup's books is that they are beautifully, not only beautifully illustrated, but the text is rhyming and it's good. In the forest, all is still, gripped by winter's icy chill. Owl sits watching in his tree. No one sees as much as he. And this tree goes through all the seasons, so it's got that aspect for it. So you've got rhyming skills, you've got oral language because they're learning some new vocabulary like icy chill and still, sorry. And you've got the engagement piece of finding the owl. So as I read this to the kids, I would say, where is the owl? It says there's an owl. Where is he? And we all put our hands over our eyes and we searched for the owl. And the book goes on like that. And she has a series of these books. One is about bees, and I can't remember what the others are, but if you search Britta Teckentrup, you will definitely find them. Of course, they're also listed on my interactive read aloud book list as well. But those are some great examples of the books that invite children to look for things or to search for things. And so we would put our little hands over our eyes like this as we search the pages of the book. And finally, the last type of interactive book I'm going to talk about today are books where the characters speak to the audience and sometimes ask them to respond. Now, I'm going to share one with you here but there are a bunch on the interactive book list at Pre-K Pages. And this one is called Please Don't Read This Book by Deanna Kizis. I think that's how you say that. And inside this book, you can see that the little figure, he's just like a splat of paint or ink or something, is talking to the kid. And it says, okay, you really need to follow the rules of this book or you're going to have more fun, and that would be terrible. And I would, of course, point to the words. There's the word terrible in humongous letters. So whatever you do, do not make the weirdest, silliest, most redonkadonk face you possibly can. Now, being told no is something that all young children can relate to, right? And now they're being told what not to do, but also kind of encouraged to do it. It is really fun, really silly, and it's a great way to read a book and engage your kids. But for those of you who out there who may be thinking, Vanessa, I don't like that book because it's inviting them to misbehave and not listen to adult authority or whatever. Here's what I say to that. I say that in the beginning of the year, our job as professional educators is to get kids to love school so they'll want to come back tomorrow. That is the only goal. When they leave on the first day of school, I don't care if they've learned a letter, a number, a color, a shape, any of that. What I want for them to leave with in their heart, in their mind, is the motivation to come back again tomorrow. And that is what interactive books will do in the beginning of the year, because once you have their attention, it's all downhill from there. And there are even some books that you probably already have on the bookshelf in your classroom that qualify as interactive books. And these are books that are classics, like We're Going on a Bear Hunt by Michael Rosen and Helen Oxenbury. The Little Old Lady Who Was Not Afraid of Anything by Linda Williams. And Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are three that I had on my bookshelf that I wanted to point out to you. Going on a Bear Hunt is probably one of the very best types of interactive books that exist. So I highly encourage you to pull these books out. Now, maybe not The Little Old Lady Who Was Not Afraid of Anything, because that one has a pumpkin on it, and that's a little better served in October. But Going on a Bear Hunt, there is no reason you need to keep this until a bear unit. The same for Goldilocks and the Three Bears. There is no reason to save that until your Goldilocks unit or your bear unit. There's no reason. It just so happens both of these books are about bears. But this book, Going on a Bear Hunt, invites kids to make noises, and it also lends itself well for making the motions. So now you've got their eyes on the book, right? They're looking at the pictures, and you're saying these funny onomatopoeia type words out loud, splish, splash, splish, splash. And while you're saying those words with them, so their mouth is making these funny words, these fun to say types of words, while they're doing that with their mouths. So right now you've got their eyes and their mouths. Now you're going to involve the hands and the body, making the splish splash motions, and you can use the characters on the page for your inspiration for your motions. So they're probably raising their legs in an exaggerated fashion as they trudge through this body of water that they're in, and they're holding their shoes up high. So you have their kids hold their shoes up, don't get your shoes wet, and they're walking through the water. And Goldilocks is another no-brainer when it comes to interaction, because you know how Papa Bear says, somebody's been eating my porridge, and Mama Bear and Baby Bear follow, and it goes that way throughout the book in that pattern. Perfect for making noises. And you can even add actions to it as well. So you can turn a regular everyday book that you probably already own into an interactive read aloud. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging. You don't have to be scrambling for something to write with and some paper to write all the titles and authors down. I have the entire blog post with links to all the titles at Pre-K Pages. There's a link in the show notes if you're watching along, and just type in interactive read aloud at prekpages.com if you're listening along. So I recommend using interactive books often in the beginning of the school year, right? Whether you teach preschool, pre-K, Head Start, TK, JK, all the Ks, because this is usually a young child's very first formal school experience. And let's face it, sitting and listening to somebody other than a family member read a story is often a very new experience for many young children. Some may have only been read to on the laps of their family members, if they're lucky, and others may have been to story time at the library, always with a caregiver. So school may be the first time they've been asked to listen to a story without a one-on-one adult sitting by their side. This is a really big ask for young children ages 3 to 5. And if you don't have that just right picture book at your fingertips ready to go, it can be a total failure for both you and your students. Remember, our number one job in the beginning of the school year is to help the young children in our classroom understand that reading is fun and it's something they should look forward to, because you want to motivate them to come back tomorrow, right? Interactive picture books can be great motivators for getting kids interested in and listening to stories. And once you've got their interest, the learning will follow naturally. So that brings me to the second ingredient of a super successful read aloud. And listen up, because this is where a lot of teachers make a fatal mistake. You see, you can have the world's greatest picture book or an entire library of fantastic children's books, but without this simple ingredient, you will struggle to capture your kids' attention. And that second ingredient is a little something I like to call read acting, and it does not cost a dime. Now, Dr. Jean has a fantastic catchphrase that I've heard her use several times. It's "the teacher brings the magic." And when it comes to read acting, it is 100% true. Now, I'm going to read one page from a story, and I want you to listen for the difference. So I'm going to read this page of Going on a Bear Hunt. It says, "We're going on a bear hunt. We're going to catch a big one. What a beautiful day. We're not scared." So that's one way to read it. Now here's another way to read it. And if you're watching along, notice my motions as well. "We're going on a bear hunt. We're gonna catch a big one. What a beautiful day. We're not scared." Do you see the difference there, or do you hear it rather, since this is a podcast? I was using my hand motions and, of course, encouraging the children to do the same. So when we say big one, we take our hands and we spread them out as far as we can. When we're going on a bear hunt, we put our hands over our eyes and we look for the bears, and we kind of drop our head low like this, right? "It's a beautiful day." We raise our arms like this. "It's a beautiful day." And then "we're not scared." We shake our finger in front. You can tilt your head a little bit to give a little attitude. Do you see how now I've got their eyes engaged? Because if you look at the illustration on this page, this is the portion of the book that's in black and white, right? And then when you turn the page with the onomatopoeia on it, that is when it turns into color. So it's got patterns all throughout the book, right? But that is how you turn a book with read acting into a really powerful read aloud. You see, read acting is all about the enthusiasm, the inflection, the facial expressions, and even the gestures that you make while you're reading aloud to your kids. Anybody can just read a book, right? They can read the words on the page, but when you're read acting, you're bringing the book to life. Do you see the difference? One way is to read the words on the page, and the other is to bring the book to life. Big difference, right? It's read acting that will make listening to the story more interesting than the toys on the shelves in your classroom. It's read acting that will have your students looking forward to coming to school tomorrow. And it's read acting that will motivate students to want to pick up a book on their own and pretend to read it. Now, I know some of you may be hesitant to try out read acting in your classroom. I've heard some teachers say over the many years that I've been doing this that they don't feel comfortable acting silly in front of their class. And others say they don't like to act silly in front of their co-teacher or any other adults in the room. But here's the thing. Your kids don't care. Let me say it again for those in the back. Your kids don't care. It's not like they won't like you if you act silly, because silly is the language of young children. And as for the adults in the room, you are serving as an example of what a successful read aloud experience can look like, right? Remember, it's not about you. It's about teaching children. And one of the most important jobs that we as early childhood professionals have is to help our students love school. So here's a real life example for you of what using interactive books and read acting can do. My brother does a lot of impersonations and voices in real life. I find it annoying personally, but when he reads to my nephew, it is like a Broadway production. All the characters in the books that he reads have a special voice. It doesn't matter if they're people or animals or whatever. He has quite the reputation as a guest reader at his son's preschool. And sometimes when I'm listening to him read, I go, gee, that's kind of over the top, isn't it? But what I forget is that my nephew is super active. He has 2 speeds, 0 or 100, with nothing in between. So my brother really has to be over the top to keep his attention, right? When my 5-year-old nephew starts to read, he'll probably be using inflection, gestures, facial expressions, and voices, because that's what seems natural to him. And these are the hallmarks of a good reader. Now, if you liked this episode, it's just one small part of a brand new training that I'll be bringing to our Trailblazer students next month. So apply today at teachingtrailblazers.com. Until next time, I'm Vanessa Levin. Happy reading! If you think these videos are valuable, you have got to come check out the Teaching Trailblazers program. Teaching Trailblazers is the place for teachers like you to get the professional development resources and support you need to thrive. It's where you can learn relevant, life-changing best practices with professional development created specifically around the challenges early childhood teachers face. It's where you can get access to a complete research-based pre-K curriculum that you can use either to supplement your existing curriculum or use on its own to get 100% of your students kindergarten ready by the end of the year. And it's where you can hang out and connect over all things early childhood with other teachers just like you and me. It's my favorite place on earth, and it will change your teacher life, I guarantee it. Come join us at teachingtrailblazers.com to get more information and apply today. That's teachingtrailblazers.com. I can't wait to see you there.